everyone, it's Alexandra Jowett here. Jupiter returns with a slightly different weekly astrology forecast for you this week. I'm not feeling inclined to have the camera in my face, so I'm going to be focusing here on the board, bringing our attention solely into the aspects and the planet positions. So we'll see if this is received well or not. And yeah, I'd like your feedback if this kind of works better for you, or if you prefer seeing me on the screen as well. Anyway, without further ado, we're moving into another exciting week. This is the week of November the 2nd to the 8th. And we're moving into, as I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, another kind of powerful moment in the whole story of 2020. If I just kind of acclimatize us to the backdrop, the mood music, essentially, of this week. And we now have, as many of you will know, those who follow me or other astrologers will know, this triple conjunction of planets up in Capricorn here: Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. This is the kind of the gang that has been essentially bringing about this crisis point that we've all found ourselves in this year. And a very, very potent part of that has been the conjunction. So when the two planets come together, of Pluto here, which represents the crisis. It represents the death and rebirth process. So a very profound crisis that provokes a new life, something better coming from the old. And Jupiter here. Jupiter being expansive, it's a generous planet. And so it's said that whatever Jupiter touches, it expands. And so there's been a global Jupiter very much being about the farthest reaches, the foreign, other lands, other cultures. This has been a global crisis for us all. So these two planets are once more at the same degree. They're moving into the same degree. They're within 1 degree of each other. So what's happened throughout the year is these planets have retrograded. Okay, so they came together back at the beginning of April, just as we were moving into the crisis. They then went retrograde, okay, and we were in our lockdown process. Things were kind of having a rethink, let's say, reevaluating things. They're now moving direct again. So this is the third and final of their conjunctions that they're now moving into. So again, it's this very, very powerful sense that with Pluto and with Jupiter representing our beliefs, our ideologies, okay? Pluto representing things that are hidden, things that are manipulative, things that are controlling. We can understand why there has been this wide-reaching desire to, or a feeling that we are somehow being deceived, okay? And that we would be foolish to kind of believe what's on the surface. Pluto really gets into the underneath, into the hidden, into the dark corners. That's where kind of Pluto hangs out. It's the ruler of Scorpio, where we have our sun right now. We're in Scorpio season. So that tunes us in even more to the Pluto vibration. The Pluto vibration being that of the hidden and the dark and the shadowy kind of aspects. So there is a general kind of belief, there is an ideology that there is a lot of shadowy and dark, secretive kind of energy around. People are picking up on that, and they're coming to their own ideas and beliefs about what that is. All right. The human mind doesn't like to not know. and Jupiter particularly doesn't like to not know. Jupiter's all about expanding our knowledge, expanding our wisdom. And sometimes in the kind of the less desirable way that Jupiter can present itself is the know-it-all energy. It's that I know everything, I'm right kind of energy. So along with this Pluto, well, I'm right, everyone else is stupid because they can't see this hidden darkness. And so this has birthed many of the conspiracy theories and the ideas. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying this is how some of the energy has been influencing us in that way. And that's something to look out for and question within yourself. You know, is that just the way that I'm personally channeling the influence of these planets in my own kind of way? So these two planets are building into an exact conjunction again. That will take place next week on November the 12th. But because it's such potent energy, it's important to bear in mind that that's very much active in the background right now. So it's a process of wide scale transformation, an increase, an exacerbation of the crisis. And with Pluto, frankly, representing death, yeah, an increase in the death, an increase in suffering, an increase in the crisis itself. And as I've spoken about, you know, at length lately, the square aspect that is made from these planets in Capricorn down to Mars here in Aries that's retrograding at the moment. This is what's making this conjunction, this part of the crisis, that much more different from the first time, you know, back in the spring, is because it's getting very personal. Mars is a personal planet. This is starting to hurt us on more of a personal basis. It's showing up in individual lives that little bit more profoundly. And it's also pushing us to change something within ourselves. You know, when Mars is retrograde, we are being asked to redefine our Mars energy. Our Mars energy being that of courage, being that of the warrior. Aries is the warrior, you know. What does true courage look like? What does a true warrior look like? You know, redefining power, not being something that's aggressive, but something that is strong and assertive because it comes from a more wise place. Jupiter up here is wisdom. And understanding the self better, more consciousness. So how do I need to redefine myself in terms of the context of what I've witnessed, what I've observed within myself throughout this crisis? So that's kind of the backdrop. We also have something else building into the situation, which is that we're now we're being pulled into the eclipses. So we haven't had eclipses for a little while. We've had a break from those with the nodes in North Node down here in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius. This means that as we get closer to Sagittarius season, we are being pulled back into eclipse season. So the next eclipse will actually be on the 30th of November. So those energies are already starting to pull us in, the energies of fate, destiny, and karma, you know, where the universe really steps in and takes over the show from the human. And this is certainly something that's going to be very much activated this week. So where do we find ourselves today on Monday, the 2nd of November? Well, we have the moon, we had that moon in the full moon in Taurus at the weekend. Moon today moves into the sign of Gemini. This is a way more active moon. So our emotions take on more of a conversational kind of expression. They take on an expression more of changeability as well. Moon in Gemini generally isn't going to hold on to one way of thinking or feeling for too long. It can be here 1 minute and gone the next. So lots and lots of changeability, lots of variety, lots of stimulation and general kind of movement is a Gemini thing. It's a Gemini thing because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And this is another important aspect of today, the second. We have Mercury over there in Libra, and Mercury is drawing to a station today. So what that means is that this is the degree at which Mercury will station in order ready to go direct again. So we are on the brink of the third and final part of the Mercury retrograde process. Don't forget, there's 3 very distinct parts to the Mercury retrograde. It isn't just the period of time while Mercury is in retrograde, indicated on my chart when a planet is shown in red. The Mercury retrograde 3 stages were 22nd of September to the 16th of October. That was the pre-retrograde shadow. So the issues that were being brought up and opened up and brought into our consciousness at that time, the part of your chart that it would have been moving over, when Mercury then went retrograde between October the 16th and tomorrow, November the 3rd, when it's in retrograde, that's the bit that's being looked at again. It's saying, this bit needs a little bit more attention. Wherever Mercury has been retrograding over in your chart, so between the end of Scorpio, the beginning of Scorpio and the end of Libra, okay, that part of the chart, whatever planets or angles that you have there, or in a challenging aspect perhaps, there would have been most active. What houses in your chart do these signs occupy? This has been the area of your life that Mercury has been trying to pull your attention back to and say, something here needs a rethink. Something needs to be clarified a little better. Something needs a slightly different approach or some more refining. All right. So when Mercury goes direct, tomorrow, then it's beginning to kind of go back over that area of the chart and just kind of put things back into place according to the work that you've done with it, how much you've engaged with that process. So if you've had a very challenging Mercury retrograde in terms of technology going wrong, conversations going wrong, travel disruptions, those kinds of things where the way that Mercury retrograde manifests in the outer world, you can be sure that it's trying to get you to draw your attention to something in your inner world. By creating the disruption out there, it's saying, come back within. There's something that needs your attention. So have a look at that, because now as Mercury moves direct, that's going to be coming up again to be put right as Mercury moves forward. When a planet stations, as it is doing today and tomorrow, second and third, it's basically a time when the influence that planet has is much, much, much stronger, much more amplified. And because the whole transit isn't really over yet, even though Mercury is stationing direct, we should not expect clarity. We should not expect detail, things to be falling into place just yet, okay? That comes after the post-retrograde shadow phase, all right? So don't be thinking, oh, Mercury's direct now, everything's going to be smooth and fine. Mercury's still doing some work, still, and is very, very slow moving at this point. So moving into the third then, that is the day when Mercury then does station direct, and it's the ruler of the moon. So we're going to be having We're really going to be tapped into the mercurial vibe. What's Mercury all about is changeability. So we're approaching the US election, which I can't, there's no way I can avoid talking about the US election, really, can I? We're approaching that on a day, really, when Mercury's effect is very, very strong. And that suggests that, particularly with this stage in the cycle, that clarity, precision is likely to be missing. All right. It really, really wouldn't surprise me at all if there's debate, conversation, changeability around the outcome of the election, around the results. Data is a mercurial thing. So we could be in a situation where there's, doubt cast. Let's not forget this backdrop of Pluto and Jupiter, doubt cast over the accuracy, because Mercury likes accuracy. And when Mercury's, in shadow and just stationing, we're not going to get that level of accuracy. So anticipate that there won't be clear-cut, definitive answers that remain stable and solid tomorrow. There's going to be change and debate around that subject, I suspect. The moon will also be meeting the North Node of destiny. So it's a very pivotal moment for the world. A very fated moment for this election to take place. And also with the North Node being in Gemini, that also makes Mercury the ruler of the North Node at this time as well. So again, the fact that it's at this pivotal point in its own transit intensifies the whole scene that bit more. Interestingly, this Moon North Node conjunction takes place exactly conjunct Donald Trump's Sun and North Node. So, don't want to go too deep into making any predictions around the results or anything like that. But what this does suggest in his chart is an incredibly fated moment in his time. Also, with the moon coming together with his sun, that suggests a new cycle starting, a brand new cycle, that's very fated. I suspect Trump will, in quotation marks, win whatever the outcome of the election is. That's the only kind of prediction that I would feel comfortable making at this point. I think that he will be a winner, whatever happens. It's you look at a man like Trump and you look at kind of the way that he has operated thus far, and he will have, being a Gemini himself, being strong in Gemini, he will have made a lot of kind of relationships, had a lot of conversations, done a lot of trading, done a lot of bartering and bargaining with people, which is a Gemini thing. And I imagine that actually, even if he didn't win the presidency, the connections that he's been able to form in his position of in the White House would actually facilitate him in some respects having even more power than if he was in the White House. Because in the White House, there is, other people, there's systems and procedures in place that ensure that there's some checks and balances on the conduct of the president. And so potentially I could see a scenario where even if he wasn't the president, he would really come out a winner. So it's a slightly different take on the whole scenario than probably a lot of people, but that's definitely my feels on it. But yes, an incredibly fated time for us all, but particularly for Mr. Trump as he starts a brand new, very fated cycle in his life. And of course, he was born at Eclipse as well. So he came here to have quite an extraordinary life. as we can all see. The other thing that we need to mention on this day as well then is Mars. So coming back to the Mars scenario, on Thursday, on the 3rd, on Tuesday the 3rd, on election day, Mars arrives back at 15 degrees of Aries. So this is a pivotal degree because this is the degree that Mars entered shadow, went retrograde, and then comes back to. So this is quite a powerful point in the Mars transit as well. And it also means that Mars is slowing down, preparing to go direct, just like Mercury has done. They slow down, so they take a lot, they hang out at that degree that bit longer because the transit is much slower. That means that we pick up on it more. So we're going to be feeling a lot more of the Martian influence. In the unconscious individual or someone that's just not minded to consider their actions, which Mars in Aries quite often isn't, it's a rash, impulsive energy. This could provoke, aggression. There's no doubt about it. This could provoke violence. Mars is, a violent planet, or it can be. It can provoke violence. So having that at such a power degree and preparing to move direct within the very foreseeable future, again, we're really going to be feeling the Martian influence, and coupled with all this Mercury energy that's likely to take place in dialogue, in communication. All right. So my advice is just to expect there to be a lack of harmony. All right. Just expect that there's going to be a lack of harmony. Don't go into any kind of social setting or any kind of conversation expecting that there to be kind of, unless you're with very, very self-aware people, obviously. It would be wise to kind of avoid any difficult, challenging conversations right now, because the ego gets very much stimulated with Mars in Aries. It's very much about defensiveness. There's not as a willingness to compromise. All right, there's not a willingness to just say, perhaps I have this wrong, or perhaps my view needs softening somewhat. This is just like, I'm right, deal with it kind of thing. And if everyone's doing that, then yeah, nobody really wins. So watch out for that. So a very, very powerful election day on Tuesday. The moon continues through Gemini, and then as we move into the 4th of November, then the moon comes home to the sign of Cancer. The influence here is going to bring emotions more to the surface, though. Cancer is way more sensitive and emotional than Gemini. Gemini, being an air sign, can be quite rational. It can be quite detached. It can be quite objective. All right. But as soon as that moon moves into Cancer as we progress through the week, then it's really tapping in the public consciousness. The public is also ruled by the moon into, well, what are my feelings? And with Cancer, the another aspect, another dynamic of Cancer energy is the home, the family, protecting my home and my national identity, my wider family, these kinds of things. But it's very sensitive and very emotional. So emotions are going to start building, all right, as we come through the week, as some of the disarray and lack of clarity and these kind of challenging aspects really start to find an emotional expression rather than just being logical and brain-based, as it were. We've also got at this point Mercury still very, very slow, still very, very potent. Mercury at this point is, I'm going to take that aspect off down to Mars there just to make things easier to see. Mercury is now in aspect to Saturn. And of course, this will be building up throughout the week as well. So this is a square aspect representing a challenge, an awkwardness, you know, a tension. With Mercury wanting to be able to have an agility, let's say, Saturn is going to have a restrictive, in a challenging aspect like this, it's going to bring out the side of Saturn that is limiting. Okay, it's a contractive energy, so it's going to be limiting. So what's it going to limit? Mercury, it's going to be limiting clarity. It's going to be limiting precision. Our thinking processes and communication style may take a more pessimistic tone. So I think the general dialogue is going to be, you know, very, very pessimistic and woeful potentially. It can be quite critical. You know, Mercury with Saturn like this really can be, you know, very critical, quite harsh in the way that it talks. Saturn's quite a cold, hard kind of planet. So when this is kind of ruling our brains and our minds and our mouths, as I call Mercury sometimes, you know, it's going to give them a harder and a colder emphasis. So difficulties in communication, difficulties in getting your point across, difficulties in understanding, challenges and limitations around clarity and definitiveness, okay? Precision is impeded, pessimistic thinking, all of these things as well. So really, really not what we want at this time. We would all benefit, I'm sure, from just having a very clear and decisive outcome to this scenario. But again, this Saturn squaring Mercury leads me to think that that might not be the case straight away, certainly. We also have at this point, and then moving into the 5th of November, we have Venus now applying to an opposition to Mars. All right. So Mars getting more and more potent as the days go on, preparing to turn direct, and an opposition to Venus. So this is applying again all through the week, but it's really intensifying as we get into the 4th and the 5th. So the further into the weekend we go, when the moon is progressing through Cancer, as she will at this time, that's actually going to activate this even more because she will be essentially creating what we call a T-square, all right? So that's basically a hard aspect between these 3 points that are involved. So we've got a very emotional, emotive, public, right, with the moon here, which is now applying in opposition to the crisis up here, all right? So as the moon progresses through Cancer, she's going to be in opposition first with Jupiter, then Pluto, then Saturn, all right? So that's a whole story in itself. But if that wasn't enough, with the square to Mars, giving us a more aggressive tone to our emotions that are already very kind of feelings based, and then also in conflict to Venus being our values. Yeah, this is just going to, I mean, this just speaks to a massive amount of polarity, and polarity is, you know, something that we've all picked up on in 2020, the absolute polar opposites of values and opinions, beliefs about the virus, beliefs about, you know, the handling of the situation, you know, faith in our leaders. You know, it's it's going to be even more exacerbated essentially by this dynamic of the astrology. So there's going to be a clash, Mars, a clash of values. What's right? What's the right thing? You know, what comes from the heart, and that's going to be turned into something very, very emotive. And people's sensitivity is going to be far easier to hit. So yeah, the fourth and the fifth are really, I see where there's going to be quite a flaring up of emotions in a not very welcome way, unfortunately. As we go into the sixth, then that is the point at which the opposition from Moon to the planets up there in Capricorn, that's when we're going to see that. Okay, so fourth, fifth, sixth, this really is the part of the week. You know, there's a lot going on at the beginning of the week, but I think that the outcome of that is going to be in the second half of the week as we move into this energy, you know, of the, again, an opposition is a polarizing force, you know, the feeling nature, you know, this is a conflict between, with Cancer and Capricorn, it's a conflict between head and heart, of rationality and practicality against the sensitive and emotional side of self. But with the Moon being involved with such a powerful situation going on up there in Capricorn, it's really going to be a peak moment in the astrology of this week. Absolutely. And again, that's going to create a T-square to Mercury. So again, this is likely to take the form, for most people, this is going to take the form of conversation, dialogue, might be a time to give social media a miss, particularly if you expect, you know, if your expectations of conversations on social media are anything other than glib, off-the-cuff remarks that, you know, are just done in the heat of the moment, which essentially I suspect is largely, you know, if we liken social media to conversations held in any social context at a party or in the pub or that kind of thing, essentially we shouldn't expect someone to turn up with a file of evidence to back it up. This is not, you know, this is not someone giving a TED talk. This is someone having a chat over a pint. And I think we would all do a lot better to kind of have that expectation of social media around this time, if not in the longer term, because you know, clarity is going to be, you know, we're going to fall short of any kind of precision. So it's not one it's not a time to be asking someone to explain themselves or give evidence or give facts to back up anything. No, none of the conversations are going to be coming from that place. They're going to be coming from a very, very flared up emotional part of the self for everybody. So limitations in check, expectations in check even for that time. As we move into the weekend then, okay, let's have a look. Firstly, we've got the backdrop of that Venus-Mars opposition, you know, is still very much going to be present. You know, that clash of values. With with the Moon now moving into Leo, the Moon in Leo tends to be a little bit more fiery and a little bit more, let's say, dramatic, a little bit more expressive, and a little bit more self-centered. Okay, Leo is ruled by the Sun. It's at the center of the universe, and there's an expectation with Leo energy. We all have Leo in our chart somewhere. The expression of solar Leo energy is around the self, and we do need to focus on the self. But when the Moon is in Leo against this kind of backdrop, it's likely to be that there'll be a more of a selfish expression at this time, which is not really going to help the whole situation, particularly not with Mars as it is at the moment either. So an increase in drama and self-centeredness I would expect with the moon there. And, you know, the Venus-Mars opposition goes exact as we move into Sunday, which is ruled by the sun, all right, as is Leo. So, you know, we've got this very solar kind of emphasis as we move into the weekend. It's also going to be the last quarter square moon. So we are at a point in the lunar cycle, the relationship of the moon to the sun, where we have had the opportunity to integrate and dissect and consider everything that came up during that very, very powerful Taurus full moon that we just had conjunct Uranus there. Quite a shocking full moon for many. And, you know, at this point in the lunar cycle, it's like, okay, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to say, are you ready to implement the changes that you need to change according to what the full moon showed you? Are you ready to let something go, leave something behind? And that might be something related to our ego. And this ties in so beautifully with the Mars in Aries retrograde position. You know, is there something about the, you know, my relationship to self, my sense of self, my, you know, my egoic presentation to the world that needs to be left behind now, so that as I move into a new moon, I can have a fresh start. And believe me when I say the new moon that we have coming up in Scorpio, which I'll talk to you about next week, is really beautiful. I really love this new moon and I'm excited about it. So this is the opportunity to prepare for that wonderful new start. This is the opportunity that says, let's clear out the old, clear out what's getting in the way of me making the most of the new lunar cycle. Okay, so we're already working with that essentially by working with this one that comes before. And don't forget, we've got those eclipses that we're moving back into. So it's a very challenging weekend with the polarity of values and views, lots of Mars influence, lots of ego influence, lots of drama. It's not going to be a calm week at all. It's likely also to be fast change, things changing fast by minute to minute, with Gemini being so active, Mercury Gemini thing. It's like 1 minute there's this, then there's something else, then there's something else kind of thing. So I would strongly recommend as much grounding as possible, however you do that. Getting into deep breath work just periodically, a couple of times a day, walks in nature, getting bare feet on the ground, even though it's getting colder now. You know, I'm still walking on the beach barefoot because, you know, it's really, really important to have that connection and be rooted and stable. This is very unstable energy that we're in, and we need to kind of feel more solid and together, so that these erratic energies don't just, you know, shake us all over the place, essentially. So that's what I have for you this week. As always, I really hope that that's been helpful. Please give me a like, a love, a share. Do comment, let me know how this is affecting you, and you know, communicate with each other as well. I love to see dialogue taking place on my posts because it really helps other people. And what I'd like to do is create something of a community for us all to kind of explore the influence of astrology on our lives. And that's going to take everyone that watches me to get involved in that process. So I'd really encourage that, because we can offer each other help just by being open and sharing of ourselves. It's very Scorpio kind of thing to do. We can feel very vulnerable in being seen, but actually I'd like to encourage that as much as possible so that we can support each other and encourage each other's transformation and change. So do leave comments about how things are showing up for you and how you're handling them. And I'll be here next Monday. So until then, lots of love. Bye for now.